All right, cool. Looks like we're live now on the YouTubes. I imagine a few people will drop in at some point soon. Um, but in the meantime, we'll kind of recap. Been doing some urban sketching lately. Just got back from a trip to New York. Also, finally got the dual webcam stream going, so you can actually see me at work now. So that's good. Um, and see the overhead view. So here we go. So just been doing some quick sketching mostly. Um, nothing overly technical. I mean, there's a fair amount of technique that goes on here, but nothing like we're not getting rulers out. You know, um, doing things like this and doing stuff like this. Kind of trying to create um, at least somewhat interesting compositions through here. I think this next one we're gonna try doesn't really have you can't really see the ground plane. So that's going to be an interesting kind of challenge. I usually like to see the ground plane when I'm doing this sort of thing. But this one actually kind of like offers some interesting shapes, and there's this idea that the sky is darker than the buildings, which I kind of like too. Um, it's also got a little bit of three-point perspective here. I took this through a window, and you can kind of see in the reference that there's a little bit of stuff there, but I'm going to ignore that um, in favor of um, creating bold and interesting shapes otherwise. If we do have a horizon, I honestly think it's below the frame because the way I see it, it's kind of like tilted up and we're looking up a little bit. Um, we're in sort of a 2 point perspective situation, so we have vanishing points like kind of well off the page, going at a pretty severe angle downwards. Like if you were to use sort of a clock angle, it'd be like if this is 3 and this is 6, we're kind of like this angle is kind of halfway between, sort of like a cool 430. So what we do here is kind of establish some lines, and then I like to just kind of do some quick fanning to kind of um, just sort of plan this out a little bit. We can make sure that vanishing points are well off the page that direction. And then there's going to be stuff that juts out from here, but that's okay. We're not going to worry too much about that at the moment. Um, we have trees that come in here. There's like a couple layers of them. And what's cool is they kind of create some organic shapes that go up kind of high and then come down. So there's like a little bit of organic diagonals down here at the bottom, which is convenient. We have a church steeple going here, but I think we're going to leave that out for a second and kind of draw this main sort of thing that comes a little bit above the center. The church steeple creates a tangent in the photograph, which I don't like. So we're gonna have to fix that when it comes down to the actual piece here. And then this, since it's parallel, has to go along the same lines. So try to get that extreme angle going. And then this has to kind of flatten out. So if we imagine this kind of going to an opposing vanishing point with a line like that, then we need this to kind of like slowly swing downwards. This vanishing point's going to be further away. Um, and then we have another building sort of like stacked on top here. Got kind of like several layers going back here. I want to make sure that they create good bump outs so they don't actually cross each other very readily. Looks like there's a water tower up here too. So we can stick that kind of behind on a box this coming this way. We might make a little bit of a change here to it. Um, then off this water tower, we have like kind of this building behind it, or a little piece of a building behind it that comes through. And down a little bit. And then another building that comes out over here that we're going to kind of move a little bit out of the way. And that goes down. Again, at another extreme angle here. And we get more shapes clustered around as well. This one kind of goes at a really funky angle. Then there's this guy which comes out like this. And then this shape comes out like kind of over here. But I'm going to move that over like that. And then this building, we're going to have another building come out through here that kind of comes here. See, that kind of creates like a weird line through there. I don't know that I like that that continues, so maybe we'll move it. I think the original comes through the water tower. So we're going to move it there, and then it's got another little piece stacked on top that goes down. Kind of complicates the silhouette some. Then we're going to come up, not super high, but just kind of create like a little bit of shape variety there. Come up, down, and over towards this vanishing point and down. So this is going to create like a little teeny sky area. What's cool about this is that there are like these neat shadows that come across. And I don't think we're going to outline the shadows. I think those are going to have to be done with more with marker here. If you're just tuning in, thanks a lot. Glad you're here. I'm just doing some urban sketching from some photos that I took on some travels to New York this last week. If you have questions, feel free to comment. If you want to lurk and just hang out with and watch, that's totally fine. I get it, might be at work or something, you know. Can't really sit there being too distracted. Um, Personally, I like using contrasting pens instead of doing pencil because I don't like to erase and then have just like this extra step. I find that like the red pen or blue, works pretty good. Works for me anyway. I think other people might get frustrated with it. I'm not sure. I have this teeny little shape down here that's going to get cropped off in this. That's got the window, but we're going to increase the size of that for this window. And then we're going to come up and add another window about here and get this archway in. So it's going to get cropped off there, come up to about here. And then the archway has to go in perspective, but then we ignore perspective for the arch itself. And then that comes down, it gets cropped off. And through it, we see another little window back here. So we're going to get a little light pop within this. And this will all be dark. Then we get the cool textures coming across. So we'll add those we'll probably just add those when when we come in. This window above is actually kind of offset. It's a little strange, but we're gonna add it in anyway. Goes in fairly deeply. And again, we're just following 2-point perspective. So we set this line up so we use those lines that are already there. And then we get another window up here. This one's kind of short and squat. We're still going to add it in. This one's going to go extremely, have an extreme sort of 2-point perspective distortion. Again, we're doing this. This is more just to get the layout with the red pen. We didn't actually add in the church steeple yet. It has to move from where it's positioned in the actual reference because the end of the steeple lines up here. I'd rather it end like in here um, so that it doesn't mess anything up. So we're just going to kind of like lower it down. This is Trinity Church over in the financial district in New York, if you're curious. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Looks like a couple of people watching. Super psyched to have you. If you haven't tuned in before, you know, that's really cool. Glad you're checking things out. Got a lot of like other stuff just on the YouTube channel generally. And lately, I've been working on creating. I haven't released them yet, but I'm working on creating some more courses like that go into huge amount of depth in term like that I can't really get into in the classes that I teach, just because there's not enough time um, to really do all these topics some justice. So I'm trying to get that knowledge out into the world. Try to keep things like really simple and achievable, you know. There's too much struggle that goes on with making art and a lot of like self-doubt. So trying to boost people's like abilities and confidence at the same time. Um, you notice too that some of these lines like cross through. That doesn't really matter because that's going to kind of disappear as we lay down value. What's cool about this composition is that when we put the value down, all of this area is going to be really dark, including the trees. And so it's going to like kind of anchor this pretty well. And then I think like all of this stuff is going to largely be white, and we're going to leave it blank. Um, and then this, the sky is going to have a value. So it's going to be an interesting like, it's kind of an interesting value map when we get there. Um, so here I like to just go right into the, when I have enough stuff established, I like to go in with the inking a little bit and just start to get right into it, you know. If I realize that I need like an extra guideline, I'll come back and add it because I need one there for that area. But from here, we can just go right in and start. I'm always curious too. It's like, you know, if you're if you're tuning in, watching, like, are you if you're just here to like watch people draw, just fascinated with art, if you make art yourself and what that looks like. So I like knowing, I like seeing what people make. You know, even if you're just a beginner and you don't really want to show it, it's still fun to see, you know, where people are at. This one's got kind of the using the brick to create like the dental sort of look of molding. So we're going to add those bricks in. Add that in. This is all going to get darkened when we get to that little layer. Cool, looks like we got some more people coming in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're just doing some urban sketching. If you have questions or want to just chat and hang, works for me. You're welcome to draw from this reference too. I know it's a little bit small, but if you want to follow along, actually, that's cool too. If you're learning, the best way to learn is to actually like, get out there and get into it. If you're just here to watch, I'm down for that too. All right, this is going to be a little bit more intense when we get down here. We need to actually do some layout work with the texture. I think these textures in here are really critical for me because they actually change this outer edge. So the silhouette actually changes here. So we need to include that. So wherever this goes, there's actually like a little jig inwards here. And then where the next brick comes in, goes over, it actually changes the silhouette, so the silhouette kind of like comes in and out here. So we're gonna actually have to slow way down actually, and just like sort of manually get through this section. And here's where a lot of my students get uncomfortable because spinning the sketchbook is weird. But I highly recommend when you're doing stuff like this that you do spin the sketchbook. Here right above, this is going to create like one of those doubled up sections. So when you get to a segment like this, you have something critical where you need to line up. I start to work both ends and try to figure out how I'm going to subdivide a little early on, usually, so that the chances of it being a little more even are higher. Because I really, really don't like to get rulers out and measure. It's an unfun experience for me. Um, and I think a lot of my students hate it too. Um, although when I first teach perspective sketching, um, I usually have people get out a ruler to set up their grid and then put it away and then don't pick the ruler back out, um, which I think is a good compromise because you get the sort of you get what you need from it, which is like a good solid like ground to build off of, and then you can just sort of free sketch once you have the ground. And here again, we're lining up this window, but we're doing the double up below the window. Windows here, and that's going to be dark. Um, this is going to be like a full black area, and then we're going to have some dark values coming in here too. have stuff going in different directions behind. We do need to get this window in. I think I might eliminate this little area because it's like kind of more relief carving than it is like full-on architectural detail. Um, but we might include some of the architectural detail surrounding this window here. If you're watching this after the live stream, um, that's cool too. For those that are gonna watch the recording, it's like I'm excited that people like just check it out, you know. We'll come back to that and add more like shadows and things. But for now, this is pretty well established. I think we can leave it alone. We probably need to basically, I think the general procedure here in inking is we go from the foreground to the middle ground to the background. So this is foreground, this is foreground. This would be probably a middle ground, and then this would be background. Or I guess maybe this could be considered middle ground. But what we need to do here is come through and get our um, our organic bushy shapes in for these trees that kind of grow in front. The trick to this is that we want them to create a little like undulating area, but we don't want them to create parallel lines too much. So we want these to go in sort of different directions and shape and create different shapes than from each other. Like we have kind of two layers of trees. That's what I'm kind of talking about. They'll kind of loosely parallel each other because, you know, you kind of can't really avoid it too much, but we don't want it to be super obvious. Um, what we can do here is sort of find, because the lighting kind of comes from the top, so what we want to do is, um, well, because it's in shadow, the lighting has to come from the top. So what we want to do is basically find like a quick um, shadow side here so that we are going to get a little bit of lighting differential when we go about this. So each tree kind of has like a dark and a light side. Now we're going to run into the next little bit here. I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat too in case anybody has any questions. One of the things that I'm working on when I sketch is, and I encourage everybody to work on it too, is just sort of like staying relaxed with your hand so that your energy comes across better. Because you want a lot of energy to come into the mark making. And I find if I have like a lot of hand tension, well, one, it hurts, but two, it kind of hurts the drawing. It's an interesting little negative shape that I didn't notice when I was doing the layout, but we'll add it in there. It's kind of cool. There's some like jagged detail to the silhouette, which we can kind of do is like little broken dots or little pieces of line work coming up. And then we can add in sort of more of the facets. 'Cause it looks kind of octagonal, like it's eight-sided. Um, then we can work on a little bit more architectural detail here. But again, I kind of want to keep it loose, you know, just more imply what the architectural detail is rather than be like very prescriptive with it. Now we need to move into the background. And we want to be sure this angle goes in together so that we kind of do get that feeling like we're looking up, you know? Keep that dizzying feel of New York. And this kind of has some shape to it up here. Um, it's got like a little register, and then we can kind of see some windows kind of crapping in here. Little sets. And again, because we're adapting and kind of moving things around, things won't quite line up the way they are in the reference, and that's fine. That's to be embraced here. This is kind of fun because this is a really like complicated section right here. There's like lots of little small shapes like clustered together. Um, and I think that's good because you kind of need some complicated shapes periodically, or complicated areas, to make sure that you're you're building enough interest into the piece. Because if it were all simplified shapes, then it would get really kind of boring. Um, and what we're trying to do here is kind of create an interesting negative shape up top in this, so the sky has an interesting shape. Um, Really, what this is about is designing shapes, and when you get um, when you get a good reference photo, it makes it easier to design the shapes. And when you can take the reference photos yourself, you have a higher chance of creating those interesting shapes because you get control of that initial idea, that initial thought. So I'm really big on taking my own reference photos, and I encourage everybody to do so because it's just nice because you get the aesthetic control, and then all your work has something to do with your own sort of personalized experience. And I love that idea that everybody's work kind of has a lot to do with them and like the things that they've seen and the places that they've been. So I think there's something really enjoyable about how people react to places, and the things that you see in different places and how you might connect to a place as opposed to somebody else. Like if you're from the place versus if you're just visiting versus like if you're just from an entirely different country, you would react to it differently. See this, I need to change that shape because this wasn't really going in the right kind of line. Um, so we've got things blocked in here. We might need a little bit more architectural detail up here. Um, there are some like bricks that some brick line work that we could use here. We just need to be sure that it's like a different, like a similar size to this, but different than all the other stuff here. Um, and we want the brickwork to kind of split evenly there, I think, and run from here. So we'll use that as sort of the basis. And then these kind of have these little teeny vertical splits that we're going to probably need to add. And then these, we want them to be big and chunky and kind of blocky, squarish. And then we'll offset them a little bit. And then these we'll do a little smaller. Again, going down to like this size probably. And again, I'm turning this so I can kind of like view the angle and kind of keep it somewhat consistent with everything. And these, we're gonna have to redesign, kind of make them like a little longer here than they normally would appear to be, according to the reference. So what I'm kind of thinking is, um, what you try to do is like make sure that every time you have like another register, there's like a different textural feel. That way, like the size is different. Um, and this kind of has like a good like medium compared to each other. So this is going to get really small. This is going to be our big, and this is going to be kind of our medium, because each one of these has its own little vertical bricks that kind of wedge out like this. And so they're going to get broken up like this. So this is going to be kind of the intense part of the drawing in terms of the amount of texture that happens. And again, I'm not too formulaic. Other people might like literally count bricks, but not me. I just am more interested in the fact that they're small shapes, and I'm trying to like balance out medium and large shapes with small shapes too. This ends here because this is going to be a window down here. And that's just going to be like a nice anchoring dark corner shape. So yeah, now we have like three wildly different textures for each like register of the building, so that helps kind of differentiate. And then this is all going to darken, so it's not going to feel as like intensely contrasty here. Um, so the next thing that we can do is basically blank all this out and darken this whole segment. Um, So what we need to do is basically make this the medium, this is going to be the dark, and this is going to be the light values. At least we're going to start there. We might darken this later. And the part, we want to leave this part blank. Um, so we're going to start here. Highly recommend if you have a spot that you need to leave blank and you're using marker, start around that spot. And then this is all going to get darkened too, but that can be done later. So for now, we can just work on this one value here. Cool thing about working in black and white like this is you can actually, once you're done with this, you could scan it and then put it in like Procreate or Photoshop and then put like color overlays on top of it, or um, use it as the foundation for a digital painting. You could also do the same thing with like colored markers, and you could put colored markers on top of the black and white to kind of get get a little bit of color going here, which is, it's always fun to do that. Cool. There. That gets that kind of established in the dark. And then we're going to use the brush pen to kind of push the shadows down here so that we get some variation within the building. Main thing is we're going to work on shadows within the windows here. Um, if these were bigger areas, I would totally get out the acrylic paint pen and go to town. These are relatively small areas. Again, if you're tuning in just now, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Just doing some urban sketching. Man, not out in the environment urban sketching, but yeah, using photo references that I've taken to kind of create this, and kind of working my way slowly through this one. I have a plan in my head of how to map this out, um, and so we'll get there eventually. basic idea is that like the light area in the reference is going to be white with like little bits of pen detail. This is going to have some value on it. This is going to be pretty dark. So our value map is basically going to be like medium, dark, and light as we go uh, front to back. Here we're going to bump up some line weight here just to kind of give this a little bit more um, depth and dimension so it's not reading as just like lines on paper but more shadows. So the idea is to use the line weight, the thickness of the line as the indication of a shadow. And they shouldn't be perfect shadows. This whole thing should be dark. It's basically the window that got cropped off here. This one, we're probably going to have to darken that a little bit. That's okay. Um, so if we squint at the reference, squinting is always good because it kind of shows you value relationships. This is overall just very dark here. So we're going to use the 80% gray marker here for this whole area, and this is all going to kind of get the same value, and then we can go in and do some differentiation after that if we need to. If you're curious about the materials that I use, I use pretty simple stuff. The Lamy Safari fountain pen, Pentel Tradio Stylo is like the sort of main sketching pen that I use. Um, and markers are just Copic markers. I use them um, primarily because they're refillable and that cuts down on cost long term. You can also change the nibs out with the Copics. Um, and so I find that like really nice because you're not throwing away a lot of material. What I like about markers like this is that they're very procedural. Once you kind of get your process down, you can sort of change all the shapes, but the process doesn't shift much, so you can really rely on it and plan ahead and work through almost any situation. Working with markers too, if you plan on working on digital art eventually, it's a very digital art friendly way to work because you're working with like, you know, flat shapes um, in layers, and that's kind of how digital stuff works best is using flat shapes and layers. So that we kind of see our main shape design statement, our big silhouette here. Um, and then our next big statement is the sky, because the sky is going to be done with this neutral gray 3. So we're going to flip this around and we're going to upside down to sort of access the edge here. I'm pretty loose with drawing and marks, but one thing that I'm kind of have to slow down with is like silhouettes and edges, because they're so important in communicating what you want to do with any given drawing. So now we have our main sort of statement there, and then from here we're gonna get the silhouette or get the shadow going here, like this cast shadow, the other buildings. So this has to wrap around, go in perspective, go up. And then in our reference, this building comes out, or the shadow goes like right down there, which is like really unfortunate. So I think what we might do is bring it down a little early like this, and then bring it over, so that we get kind of like one side that has a little more shadow on it and one that has less. So this is one of those shape design things. And again, we're using this neutral gray 3, same as the sky, because what we have to differentiate the shapes. So this is the only option we have left to differentiate. Now the nice thing too is like from here we can draw back into it and add in like window details. But the general idea is there, like the statement of kind of like what's happening with it um, is all mapped out value-wise. Um, we may need to do some gradient mapping where we get like a dark gradient kind of coming uh, from the top there. Um, that might help. Um, but we can work on that later. I think for now we probably need to work on um, giving some detail into these shapes. Um, I think the main thing is like this building probably needs some detail coming through here. Um, looks like there's some perspectival detail there. Let's see here. So we kind of need to just like lay out some registers going in perspective here. Um, there's really not too many subdivisions that run all the way across. So I think we gotta kind of like work slowly through that. If you're tuning into the stream, absolutely welcome. Oh yeah, hey, welcome back. Just doing some more sketching today, kind of on this urban sketching kick because I got a lot of cool references from that New York trip. So I'm just kind of working my way through those. Um, normally I work on loose paper too, but I have this sketchbook that I brought with me and just been starting. So we're kind of like getting a little haul of urban sketches going. Just some couple horizontal ones too. Want to do some more horizontal ones soon, but working on this one, getting it, trying out like a different order of the values, because here we have, basically what we have is like a medium value, a dark value, and then a light here. Um, a lot of times when you're in outdoor situations, it just goes like dark, medium, light. Um, and I think probably that's like been the value map we've used for most of the things, where you go like dark, medium, light as we go away. Um, this one was kind of more of like a two-tone, but yeah, again, dark, medium, light as we go away. So this one's a little more sophisticated. We might actually do like a gradient here, where we take like this value and like run it down slowly like that, and then we might actually put some full blackout in here too, which especially in the trees, that could help kind of differentiate the church steeple and the trees. But here I'm going through kind of thinking thinking through what it might take to um, separate out some of this stuff without going totally nuts on the detail. Oh, interesting. So you're working on drawing medieval weapons and clothing. Are you doing like cloth type clothing or armor type clothing? I'm always curious. That hard surface rendering can be really tricky. And you made your own brushes. That's cool. I haven't really made any of my own brushes in Photoshop or anything yet. I need to, um, and I want to. I think that that's just it feels in line with something I would enjoy. I think I might need to sketch out a little bit more grid here to give myself something to work with. And I also probably want to add some vertical registers here. give myself a sort of more of a pattern to work on. Yeah, cool. Are you using Autodesk Sketchbook? Cool. Yeah. I've only used that a little bit a long time ago. I haven't touched it in a while. Um, you're right. It's probably I don't think it's free anymore, so I'm probably not going to use it. I like one-time purchase programs like things like ArtRage, Rebel, things like that. Disadvantage is like you have to keep buying the updates if you want the current version, but if you don't care about having like current versions, no big deal as long as it's stable. That is one of the frustrations with Photoshop is that you do like pretty much have to buy the subscription plan. Not a big fan. Subscriptions. But yeah, most of my digital drawing I just do in Photoshop. Um, I'm just used to it by now. A lot of my students use Procreate, but I can never really get the hang of it, and I keep wanting like hotkeys and stuff like that to make everything quicker. But um, I think it's mainly like I'm just not fluid with it, and I watch people that are fluid with it, and it's like, yeah, I'm just not there with Procreate. Again, trying this like non-technical way of working on urban sketching and perspective, because as we all know, like the technical way is like really dry, kind of frustrating, and like annoying to try to work with sometimes. Um, so I like this sort of um, like shape-based approach to it, where you're not really thinking in terms of like the super heavy-duty perspectival rules and things. You're just kind of like going, oh, okay, I need a shape there. It's kind of like, an odd shape. It goes sort of in perspective and it's close enough. Like, and that's about the extent of the perspectival thinking that I try to do. Overall, if you use, since you're using Autodesk Sketchbook, how do you like it? Is it fun to use? Is it like easy? Is it kind of like, does it have its disadvantages and clunkiness, or is it like overall really good? Minimal UI, lots of customization, community brush packs. That's cool. Sounds like there's a lot of potential there for like um, for getting exactly what you want out of the program and need, rather than having the program kind of defined for you, which is cool. Oh, interesting. Had Photoshop. What made you well, I guess cost is a factor with Photoshop, but was it like the usability of Photoshop too that made you switch out, or was it just like did you just like wind up liking Autodesk better? Cool. Now we're just working around the side of this building, trying to make these um, vaguely line up, give it a little bit of texture. Here, this is more simple. We just have some like straight up sort of verticals going down, subdividing. Got like a couple windows here, but not a lot of detail with them. This we have a lot of hyper detail there. I'm not sure if we need to include it. We could though. Could be fun. Just to have more stuff going on. Got these like big verticals going through here, which are kind of cool. Got like a bunch of teeny windows up here, which is kind of fun. It's kind of peeking out. Got lots of lots of like more vertically oriented ones here, which is cool. And then these have more of like a vertically oriented thing going on here too. And then there is, I don't think we're going to get much into the detail there, but we're going to go like with these broken lines there. And just kind of sketch out a little bit of what's going on. So there's something there, but not a lot. This has some shingling, so we're going to go add that in. Yeah, we're kind of getting there. Oh yeah, lack of texture with pen. Well, I don't know. I have a funky little idea about texture that I've been working with, and seems to make sense to students. Um, but basically, what I consider texture isn't like the sort of, random paper texture or like, mark making patterns. So like, let's say we're drawing a ball, of course, like a round ball doesn't have any texture, and then, we subdivide with pen. But like, let's say we're drawing like a little shrub, and so we have like its kind of shrub silhouette. Lighting angle is the same. Um, so what makes this different from a ball is that the silhouette changes. So texture, I think, does two things. One, the silhouette changes, and two, the shadow core changes. So this is the shadow core, right? So what happens is when you have like a bush or something, the shadow core goes kind of nuts because it's an uneven growth. And then you can use the same sort of like mark making with the pen. So to me, this is what texture is basically the idea that you change the outer contour and you change the silhouette, and that's your functional way to get texture. Um, so that can like dirty up the look a little bit, make it a little less, a little more soulful, a little less technical. Um, and then here we can do a couple more finishing touches. Like there's certain planes that definitely have shadow on them that we'd want to include. There's a little bit of shadow here. This is pretty dark right here. Can include some shadows like this here. A lot of these windows are have like darker reflections in them. Some of the ones here we're probably gonna go through and darken a few segments of windows. Not maybe not like the whole thing, but just like little bits and pieces. There are some that we could probably actually lighten. That'd be good to lighten within this area. Almost all of these are dark, so we might need to go through and just like start darkening in some areas here. Just really quick and loose. Alfonso Dunn, that's cool. Yeah, I don't know them. I'll have to look into it, see what they've got to say. The other thing I wanted to do was think about doing like a gradient down here. Basically taking this is the 50% gray, but if we did like a gradient here, it would feel like there's light kind of spilling in. So that might be really nice. And I want to go through and darken up some areas in here so that this area builds a little bit of interest. Um, Definitely within the uh, the architecture here. Start to get some dark areas kind of laid out. And there are some dark bits that go on up here. Just to kind of loosely give it some more interest and shape. And then there is a lot of dark in these trees down here. So I think we do need to like push these down. Oh, dog hair. What's cool is if we bring this dark all the way up to this building, then that's going to give us like a little extra contrast bump there, which is fun. Yeah, I mean, I think it's legit now to like learn everything off of YouTube and books. 'Cause like I don't know, when I was learning this was, early 2000s and like the info just wasn't out there in the way that it is now. I mean, there were some okay books, but not as many good ones as there are now. And YouTube wasn't as big, like the online lessons weren't really there. Like you really had to go to school um, to learn it, you know? Still think you should have a degree of some kind, like even if it's not an art degree, just some kind of college degree. But I think now you can really learn so much off of the internet. And what's cool too is like the in-person instruction's better now too, because like as a teacher now I have resources like that I didn't have like when I was learning. So now I get to like pull from even more resources to teach. Like I can go take somebody's class that I respect and like not just learn what they know, like in terms of like getting better at drawing, which I do also do, but I can watch how they teach, you know, and pick up like ideas about how to teach things better and kind of like see if people are really learning more effectively in the way that they teach. Then we're gonna darken this down to the N3. And I think I want like another little bit of layer of the neutral gray 5 like right along here just to be sure that the shape is well differentiated. down enough. I think that's it for this sketch. Cool. Yeah, I think been at it for about an hour and change. I think I'm gonna might stream a little bit more today. But I think I'm gonna stop here and and check back in later. Do some more urban sketching. I've got like 5 or 6 more things that I picked out that I would really like to sketch. But again, if you're watching in the comments or whatever, feel free to leave a comment, or watching the recording, feel free to leave comments. Just kind of keep going with this. Maybe do some that are like less marker oriented. Maybe do some that's like pure black and white ink. If I can find something that's got like really good contrast and stuff. Maybe just focus on texture. Um, but yeah, like if there's something that there's questions that you have too, or something you want me to draw, um, I'm down to do it. I don't really differentiate. I like to draw all kinds of subjects. So we'll call it there, and I'll close the stream, and we'll uh, do some more later. And thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. Yes. Yeah, and if you wanna send me stuff too, feel free. I like to see what people are working on too. All right. Have a good one, everybody. I will catch you later. Yeah, I'll keep streaming, keep putting more videos out. You're absolutely welcome.